Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku learned to fight without power. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world is not built on equality. It is built on power. Izuku Midoriya learned this lesson when he was 4 years old, sitting in a doctor's office that smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, listening to a man in a white coat explain why his dreams were dead on arrival. He relearned it every day for the next 10 years. He learned it in the silence of his mother's apologies, in the scorch marks on his uniform, and in the pitying glances of strangers who looked at him like he was a walking terminal illness. But the final lesson, the one that would shatter the glass container of his naive worldview, didn't happen in a doctor's office. It happened on a rooftop, under the burning orange gaze of a twilight sun. Muzutafu, 12:30 p.m. The day began like any other disaster, with the deceptive quiet of a classroom. Since you're all third years, it's time to think seriously about your future, the homeroom teacher said, slapping a stack of papers onto his podium. The sound echoed in the sudden hush of Aldera Junior High. I would hand out these career aptitude forms, but... He snatched the papers up and threw them into the air, a confetti of bureaucracy. Why bother? You all want to be heroes, don't you? The class erupted. Quirks flared in a chaotic display of teenage bravado, fingers elongating, eyes glowing, minor telekinesis rattling pencils. It was a celebration of genetic lottery winners. Izuku shrank into his seat, trying to make himself mathematically smaller. If he condensed his volume enough, perhaps he would cease to exist in this dimension. He kept his head down, eyes fixed on the scarred wood of his desk, etched with insults from years prior. Yes, you all have wonderful quirks, the teacher droned, waving a hand to disperse the smoke rising from a student's hands. But you know it's against the rules to use them in school. Hey, teach! The voice cut through the noise like a jagged knife. Katsuki Bakugo reclined in his chair, feet on the desk, looking at the ceiling with bored arrogance. Don't lump me in with these extras. They'll be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some busted D-lister. I'm the real deal. The class roared in indignation, but Bakugo just scoffed, small explosions popping in his palms like firecrackers. I'm going to UA High. I'm going to surpass All Might and become the top hero. The rest of you are just stepping stones. Oh, that's right, the teacher said, checking his clipboard. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA. The murmurs shifted to all. UA was the golden ticket, the Olympus of Heroes Society. But then, the teacher's eyes slid down the list, and a cruel, thinly veiled amusement curled his lip. And, Midoriya, you applied for UA as well, didn't you? The silence that followed was heavy, physical. It pressed against Izuku's eardrums. Then, the laughter started. It wasn't a sudden burst. It was a wave, starting from the back and crashing over him. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course just by studying. They don't let the quirkless in, do they? Izuku stood up, his hands shaking. They got rid of that rule. There's no precedent, but, boom. Bakugo was there in an instant, his hands slamming onto Izuku's desk. The explosion sent Izuku tumbling backward, hitting the floor hard. Smoke curled from the desk, the wood charred black. Deku! Bakugo loomed over him, smoke rising from his palms. You're worse than the rest of these rejects. You're quirkless. You're nothing. You really think you can stand in the same ring as me? No! Wait, Kaken! Izuku scrambled back until his back hit the chalkboard. It's not like I'm trying to compete with you. It's been my dream since I was little. And I won't know unless I try. Try? Bakugo's voice dropped to a menacing growl. Try what? Taking the entrance exam? You're going to die in the practical. What can you do? Throw a pencil at a villain? You're a liability. The class continued to laugh. The teacher went back to organizing his papers, indifferent to the assault happening 3 feet away. This was the natural order. The strong exerted their will. The weak absorbed the impact. 1:45 p.m. The school day ended, but the torment hadn't. Izuku was packing his bag, his movements efficient and hurried. He wanted to be out of the building before the corridors filled up. He picked up his notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. It was his pride and joy, a compendium of observation, strategy, and artwork. Bakugo snatched it from his hands before he could zip the bag. We're not done talking, Deku, Bakugo said. He held the notebook up. Hero analysis? You really are delusional. Give it back, Kaken, Izuku pleaded, reaching for it. Bakugo slammed the notebook between his palms. Crack boom. When he pulled his hands apart, the notebook was smoking, the cover charred and ruined. Izuku gasped, the sound caught in his throat. Before he could react, Bakugo tossed the book out the open window. Izuku rushed to the sill, watching his hard work tumble down 3 stories into the koi pond below. You know, Bakugo said, walking toward the door, his lackeys trailing behind him. If you really want to be a hero that badly, there might be another way. He stopped at the threshold and looked back over his shoulder. His red eyes were devoid of empathy. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll be born with a quirk in the next life. The door slid shut. Izuku stood there, vibrating. Not with fear, not anymore. With a rage he didn't know how to process. His fingers curled into fists, his nails biting into his palms. He wanted to scream. He wanted to chase Bakugo down and do what? Whatever I do, Izuku thought, the logic cold and invasive, he would just blow me up. And the teachers would say I provoked him. He picked up his bag and walked out. Outside, he fished the notebook from the pond. The koi nibbled at the soggy pages. Stupid fish, he muttered, shaking the water off. That's not food. As he walked home, taking the route through the underpass to avoid people, he tried to salvage his mood. He replayed the footage of Empty Lady's debut from that morning in his head. Gigantification. Powerful, but limited in urban environments with narrow streets. High collateral damage risk. She needs to work on spatial awareness. He was so lost in his analysis, muttering under his breath, that he didn't hear the manhole cover slide open behind him. He didn't hear the slick, wet sound of fluid gathering, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. A gurgling voice hissed. Izuku turned. He didn't have time to scream. A wave of green sludge crashed over him, forceful and suffocating. It forced its way into his mouth, his nose, filling his throat with the taste of sewage and rot. Don't struggle, kid, the villain whispered, the voice vibrating directly against Izuku's eardrums. It'll only hurt for a minute. I just need to hide inside you. I can't breathe. Izuku clawed at the slime. His fingers passed right through the liquid, finding no purchase. It was like trying to punch water. Panic flared, white-hot and primal. Is this it? Am I dying? His vision began to spot with black dots. The strength drained from his limbs. The villain was heavy, pressing down on his chest, expanding inside his lungs. No. I can't die. I haven't done anything yet. You're a real lifesaver, the villain mocked. I didn't think he'd track me this far. Through the darkening tunnel of his vision, the manhole cover flew into the air with a metallic clang. A figure emerged from the sewers. A silhouette so large, so imposing, it seemed to block out the artificial light of the tunnel. Fear not, kid! The voice was a sonic boom. It resonated in Izuku's chest, overriding the fear. Why? Because I am here, All Might. The symbol of peace lunged forward. The sheer wind pressure of his movement pushed the sludge back. He pulled back a fist that looked like a sledgehammer. Texas. Smash! The punch didn't even connect. The air pressure alone hit the villain like a freight train. The sludge exploded outward, splattering against the concrete walls of the tunnel. Izuku was released, gasping, his lungs burning as he sucked in greedy gulps of air. He saw the blurry figure of his idol standing over him, and then, the world went black. 4 p.m. He woke up to the sensation of slapping. Hey! Hey! Izuku's eyes snapped open. A face, the face, hovered inches from his own. The chiseled jaw, the blinding smile, the 2 antennae-like tufts of blonde hair. Oh good! All Might laughed, straightening up. I was worried I'd lost you there. Sorry about that. I got a little carried away fighting evil. Izuku scrambled backward, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. All Might! You're really him. Indeed I am. All Might struck a pose, flexing biceps that were thicker than Izuku's head. He held up 2 soda bottles filled with the green sludge. And I've captured the evildoer. Safely contained. Izuku's mind was racing at 1,000 miles per hour. I need an autograph. A picture. No, an autograph. He frantically looked around for his notebook. It was lying on the ground, dried out by the wind pressure of the smash. He opened it to a blank page. Already did it. All Might gave a thumbs up. The signature was there, sprawling across 2 pages. Izuku bowed so low his forehead nearly hit the asphalt. Thank you? Thank you? It's a family heirloom. I'll treasure it forever. Okay. All Might turned, crouching down to leap. Well, I must be off to deliver this guy to the police. Stay out of trouble, kid. Wait. Izuku reached out. Already? But I have so many questions. No time. A hero is always fighting time. All Might launched himself into the air. The shockwave dusted Izuku's face with grit. Without thinking, a habit that would one day save him and kill him, Izuku grabbed onto All Might's leg. They ascended rapidly. The wind whipped at Izuku's face, distorting his cheeks. Hey! What are you doing? All Might shouted, looking down at the limpet attached to his cargo pants. Let go! I love my fans, but this is too much. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku screamed through the wind tunnel in his mouth. Oh. Right. They landed on a rooftop a few minutes later. Izuku collapsed, his legs turning to jelly, hyperventilating. That was reckless, All Might chided. He looked tired. He checked his pocket, ensuring the soda bottles were secure, then walked toward the door leading downstairs. I really have to go. The people on the other side of the door are going to be very confused. Wait. Izuku scrambled up. Please. Just one question. All Might paused, his hand on the doorknob. Izuku stared at the back of the greatest hero who ever lived. This was it. The moment of truth. The question that had burned in his chest since the doctor pronounced his sentence. Can I? Izuku's voice trembled. He clenched his fists at his sides. Can I be a hero, even if I don't have a quirk? Silence. The wind whistled through the chain-link fence. I'm not strong, Izuku continued, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. I'm always being made fun of. I'm weak. But I want to save people. I want to be like you, someone who smiles and says everything will be okay. So, can I? Can someone without power be a hero? He closed his eyes, waiting. Hoping. Just say yes. Just say it's possible. Lie to me if you have to. A sound of escaping steam hissed through the air. The voice wasn't booming anymore. It was weak. Strained. Izuku opened his eyes. All Might was gone. In his place stood a skeletal man. His clothes hung off his emaciated frame like laundry on a wire. His eyes were sunken deep into black sockets. Blood trickled from his mouth. Huh? Izuku shrieked. Where did All Might go? Are you an imposter? The skeleton man sighed and sat down heavily on the concrete. I am All Might, kid. He lifted his shirt. Izuku gagged. A massive, spiderweb scar covered the left side of the man's torso. It looked like a crater, the flesh purple and knotted. It looked like a wound that should have killed a god. 5 years ago, All Might said, his voice raspy. A villain did this. Half my respiratory organs were destroyed. I lost my whole stomach. I've wasted away from repeated surgeries. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day now. 5 years ago? Izuku whispered. Was that Toxic Chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might chuckled grimly. But no. That punk couldn't scratch me. This fight, the world doesn't know about it. I made sure of that. The symbol of peace cannot be seen to be wounded. He looked at Izuku. The gaze wasn't unkind, but it was heavy with a crushing reality. Pro-heroes are always risking their lives. Some villains just can't be beaten without power. So no, the world stopped spinning. I cannot honestly tell you that you can become a hero without a quirk. The words hit Izuku like physical blows. Harder than Bakugo's explosions. Harder than the sludge villain's grip. If you want to help people, All Might continued, standing up and wiping the blood from his chin, there are other ways. Become a police officer. They get teased a bit because they just clean up our messes, but it's a fine profession. He walked toward the door. It's good to have dreams, young man. But you have to be realistic. The door clicked shut. Izuku was alone. He stood there for a long time. The sun began to dip lower, painting the sky in hues of violent violet and bruised orange. Realistic. He walked to the edge of the roof. He gripped the railing. He looked down at the streets below, tiny cars moving like toys, people walking like ants. Bakugo's voice echoed in his head. Take a swan dive off the roof. All Might's voice joined it. You have to be realistic. Izuku leaned over. The wind tugged at his hair. It would be so easy. Just one step. Gravity would do the rest. Physics. Simple, undeniable physics. He gripped the railing tighter, his knuckles turning white. Tears welled up in his eyes, hot and stinging. Realistic. He whispered. He choked back a sob. He stepped back from the ledge. He's right, Izuku said to the empty air. He's right. He wiped his eyes furiously with his sleeve. I have no power. I have nothing. It was stupid, so stupid to think. He turned and walked toward the door. He felt hollow. Like someone had reached inside and scooped out his soul, leaving only a shell that breathed and walked. 4:45 p.m. Izuku walked through the shopping district without seeing it. The sounds of the city were muffled, like he was underwater. He was just going through the motions of returning home, ready to bury his face in his pillow and sleep until he ceased to exist. Boom! An explosion rattled the windows of a convenience store next to him. Izuku flinched, his head snapping up. Smoke was billowing into the sky a few blocks away. A villain attack. His legs moved before his brain did. Habit. A decade of chasing fights to take notes. He ran toward the smoke, pushing through the gathering crowd. But as he arrived at the police barricade, he stopped. Why am I here? He thought bitterly. I'm not a hero. I'm just a spectator. A liability. He looked at the scene. An alleyway was engulfed in flames. And in the center, the sludge villain. Why is he here? Izuku muttered, confusion cutting through his despair. All Might caught him. Unless I made him drop the bottles when I grabbed his leg. Ice water flooded Izuku's veins. This is my fault. The villain was massive now, feeding off the fires, creating a barrier of heat and slime. The pro-heroes were helpless. I can't get close, shouted Death Arms, shielding his face. My strength is useless against that fluid body. I need water, yelled Backdraft. But the fire is too intense. Where is All Might? Someone in the crowd screamed. Izuku looked at the villain. He could see a face trapped in the slime. A mouth gasping for air. Eyes wide with terror and rage. Kaken. Bakugo was thrashing, setting off explosions that only fed the fires around them. The villain was using him as a battery, a shield, and a hostage. Izuku watched the heroes. They were standing there. Waiting. We have to wait for someone with a suitable quirk. Kamui Woods yelled. Wait! Izuku thought. His eyes locked onto Bakugo's. He's suffocating. You can't wait. He'll be dead in 2 minutes. Bakugo's eyes met Izuku's. For the first time in their lives, Bakugo didn't look down on him. He looked pleading. Help me. Izuku's feet moved. Hey! Come back here, kid! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ducked under the police tape. He didn't run screaming this time. The numbness from the rooftop had transformed into something else. A cold, hyper-focused clarity. I have no power, his mind recited. I have no quirk. I cannot blow him away. He ran toward the flames. The heat was blistering. Analyze. Assess. Act. The villain saw him. You again? I'll kill you this time. The villain lashed out with a tendril of slime. He swings wide, Izuku noted instantly. Telegraphed. Izuku slid on his knees, the asphalt shredding his school trousers, ducking under the strike. He was close now. What is his weakness? Fluid body. No solid mass to punch. But he has eyes. He has a mouth. He needs to see to aim. Izuku shrugged off his yellow backpack in one fluid motion. He didn't just throw it. He swung it by the strap like a flail. Eat this. He released the bag. It flew through the air, rotating perfectly. The hard corner of a textbook inside the bag slammed directly into the villain's bulging, watery eye. Arg! The villain recoiled, his grip loosening for a fraction of a second. Izuku didn't stop. He scrambled forward, ignoring the fire singeing his hair. He reached Bakugo. Deku? Bakugo wheezed, slime covering half his face. Why? Shut up! Izuku snapped. He didn't have time for Bakugo's ego. Izuku jammed his hands into the sludge. He didn't pull Bakugo's arms. That wouldn't work, the suction was too strong. Physics. Disrupt the surface tension. Izuku grabbed the villain's collarbone area, where the slime was thickest around Bakugo's neck. He dug his fingers in and pulled outward, creating a cavity. Breathe, Kaken! Breathe now, Bakugo gasped, sucking in a lungful of smoky air. You little gnat! The villain recovered. The sludge surged, forming a massive wave above them. I'm going to crush you both. Izuku looked up. He had no weapon left. He had no plan B. He stood in front of Bakugo, raising his scarred arms in a pathetic guard. I'm sorry, Mom. The slime descended. Then, a blast of wind. I really am pathetic. All Might was there. He wasn't smiling. He was bleeding from the mouth, steam rolling off him, but he stood like a mountain between the boys and the monster. I told you to be realistic, but here I am, watching a quirkless kid do more than the pros. All Might pulled back his fist. He gripped Bakugo's arm with his other hand. Detroit. Smash! The punch changed the weather. The updraft created a localized tornado. The slime villain was atomized, scattered across the city in harmless droplets. The fire was snuffed out instantly by the displacement of oxygen. Rain began to fall from the clouds formed by the impact. Izuku sat on the ground, shivering, watching the symbol of peace stand amidst the steam. 5:30 p.m. The scolding was brutal. Are you insane? Death Arms poked Izuku in the chest with a finger like a sausage. You could have gotten yourself killed. You were a hostage waiting to happen. We had the situation under control until you ran in. You didn't, Izuku said quietly. What did you say? Izuku looked up. His face was soot-stained, his eyes dull. You didn't have it under control. You were watching him die. We were waiting for a suitable hero. Kamui Woods argued. It's protocol. Protocol doesn't save people, Izuku muttered, looking away. Meanwhile, the press swarmed Bakugo. That quirk! So powerful. You held out for so long. You're going to be a great sidekick one day. Bakugo didn't look happy. He looked furious. He glared at Izuku through the crowd, his teeth grinding. Eventually, the police let Izuku go. No praise. Just a warning that next time, he'd be charged with interference. 6 p.m. Izuku walked home as the sun finally set, casting long shadows across the residential streets. He felt heavier than before. He had acted. He had saved, or helped save, Bakugo, but the heroes had called him a liability. Deku! Izuku stopped. He didn't turn around. Bakugo stomped up behind him. He was breathing hard. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled. And you didn't save me. I was fine. I would have gotten free on my own. Don't look down on me, you quirkless nerd. You didn't do anything. Nothing. Bakugo turned and stomped away, his shoulders hunched. Izuku watched him go. You're right, Izuku thought. I didn't win. I just bought time. He waited. Part of him hoped All Might would pop out from around the corner. Maybe he would say, I was wrong. You moved when others didn't. You can be a hero. He waited 5 minutes. The street remained empty. A stray cat knocked over a can. He's not coming, Izuku whispered. Of course he wasn't. Why would he? All Might had been clear. Be realistic. The fact that Izuku survived was luck, not skill. Izuku walked the rest of the way home in silence. 7 p.m. Izuku, his mother Inko, met him at the door. She was frantic. She had seen the news. Oh my God, you're covered in soot. Are you hurt? Why were you there? She hugged him, burying her face in his dirty uniform. She was crying. She was always crying. I'm fine, Mom, Izuku said, his voice monotone. I was so worried. Why do you have to be so reckless? You know it's dangerous for you. She pulled back, cupping his face. Oh, Izuku. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing, Izuku wanted to scream. Don't apologize for my existence. I'm tired, Mom, he said instead. I'm going to bed. He walked past her, into his room. He didn't turn on the light. The glow of the street lamps outside illuminated the shrine he had built to All Might. Posters, figures, bedsheets. The smiling face mocked him from every angle. Izuku sat at his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a fresh notebook. The cover was blank. He stared at it for a long time. You can't be a hero without a quirk. You were a liability. We were waiting for a suitable hero. Suitability, Izuku murmured. Matchups. He thought about the sludge villain. The heroes failed because they viewed their quirks as hammers and the problem as a screw. They couldn't adapt. They relied on raw power. When All Might ran out of time, who would be left? If the symbol of peace vanished, and all that remained were heroes who stood around waiting for the right matchup, society would collapse. Izuku picked up a pen. He didn't write hero analysis. He wrote, null set. Premise. The world assumes power is the only metric for victory. Hypothesis. If power is removed, victory depends on tactics, environment, and psychology. Objective. Victory without power. His hand began to move faster. His muttering filled the dark room. The sludge villain. Weakness, eyes, mouth. Fluidity prevents impact damage. Solution, absorbance? Freezing agents? Centrifugal force? If I had a pressurized canister of liquid nitrogen, or even a high-powered vacuum. He turned the page. Bakugo Katsuki. Quirk, explosion. Weakness, excessive reliance on right hook. Strain on wrists. Cold weather dampens sweat production. If I target the joints, if I use his momentum. He turned the page. Kamui Woods. Weakness, fire. Herbicides. Structural leverage. Empty lady. Weakness, gravity. Narrow spaces. Sensory overload. Izuku looked up at the All Might poster above his desk. The hero was pointing at him. I count on you. The caption read. Izuku stood up. He walked over to the poster. He didn't tear it down. That would be childish. He still respected All Might. He respected the man who saved the world. But he didn't need a god anymore. He took the poster down carefully, rolled it up, and placed it in the back of his closet. The wall behind it was bare, pale, and empty. He sat back down. He opened his browser. He didn't go to the hero fan forums. He went to the settings and clicked delete account. Then, he opened a new search tab. He typed, Musita for mixed martial arts dojos. He typed, Japanese self-defense laws and vigilante loopholes. He typed, chemistry, flashbang composition. The light from the screen reflected in his green eyes. They weren't the wide, watery eyes of a fanba anymore. They were sharp. Cold. Calculating. All Might had told him to be realistic. Okay, Izuku whispered to the empty room. I'll be realistic. He looked at his hands. They were scarred, weak, and shaking. But they were his. If I can't be the symbol of peace, he said, the pen digging into the paper, then I'll be the nightmare of those who think power is everything. He turned to a fresh page. Plan A, the UA entrance exam. Time remaining, 10 months. Goal, total reconstruction. Izuku Midoriya didn't sleep that night. He wrote. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't writing about how cool other people were. He was writing a war plan. The transformation of Izuku Midoriya did not happen with a bang. It happened in the quiet, agonizing hours before the sun rose, and the lonely, aching hours after it set. It happened in the silence of a room stripped of its idols, and in the noise of bones hitting mats. It began the morning after the sludge incident. Izuku woke up at 4 a.m. His body felt heavy, a lingering lethargy from the previous day's trauma, but his mind was vibrating with a cold, electric frequency. He sat up, the springs of his bed creaking. He looked at the walls. Yesterday, they had been a shrine to the symbol of peace. Now they were bare. The pale squares where posters had hung for years looked like scars on the wallpaper. He didn't feel sad looking at them. He felt uncluttered. He walked to his desk. The notebook lay open. Null set. He turned the page to the entry he had made last night. Phase 1, Foundation. Underneath, he had written a list. 1. Conditioning, stamina/durability. 2. Combat, striking/grappling. 3. Weaponry, extensions of reach. 4. Law, the line between hero and vigilante. He looked at his arms. They were thin. Soft. The arms of a boy who spent his life holding a pen. He squeezed his fist. It trembled. This, he whispered, is not enough. He put on his tracksuit, the green one, unbranded, blending into the foliage. He laced up his red sneakers. He walked out of the apartment, past his mother's sleeping form, and into the cool, pre-dawn air of Musudafu. He started running. Month 1, the reality of flesh. Finding a teacher was harder than finding a villain. Izuku spent the first week visiting every reputable dojo in the district. The responses were variations on a theme, a symphony of rejection playing on a loop. We focus on quirk-enhanced martial arts here, kid. If you can't emit energy, you can't do our kata. You're 14? A bit late to start if you want to be competitive. Why do you want to learn to fight? Self-defense? Buy a taser. They looked at his small frame, his nervous eyes, which were slowly hardening, though they didn't notice, and they saw a victim. They didn't see a student. It was on the 8th day that he found the rusty anchor. It wasn't a clever name. It was literally a converted warehouse near the docks, the sign hanging by a single chain, rusting in the sea air. The windows were taped over. It smelled of stale sweat, mildew, and tiger balm. Izuku slid the heavy metal door open. Inside, there were no polished wooden floors, just concrete covered in mismatched mats, heavy bags duct taped together, and a ring that looked like it had seen illegal betting matches. A man sat on a folding chair in the center, reading a horse racing newspaper. He was older, perhaps 50, with a shaved head and a beard that looked like steel wool. He wore a stained tank top, revealing arms that were a road map of scar tissue. He didn't look up when Izuku entered. We're closed. Or broke. Whichever gets you to leave faster. I want to learn how to fight, Izuku said. His voice didn't crack. He had practiced saying it in the mirror 100 times. The man turned a page. Go to the strip mall dojo on 4th. They give out yellow belts for attendance. They won't teach me. Why? You got no money? I have money, Izuku said, clutching the envelope of savings he had scraped together from allowances. They won't teach me because I'm quirkless. The man froze. He lowered the newspaper. He had one good eye. The other was clouded and milky, a jagged scar running vertically through it. Quirkless, huh? The man stood up. He wasn't tall, but he was dense. He walked over to Izuku, circling him like a shark inspecting a guppy. So you want to learn self-defense? Stop the bullies from taking your lunch money? No, Izuku said. I want to take down villains. The man laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound, like gravel in a blender. Go home, kid. You've got a death wish. I don't train suicides. Bad for business. I'm going to UA, Izuku insisted, turning to face him. I'm going to be a hero. The man stopped laughing. He stared at Izuku with an intensity that made Izuku's skin prickle. Then, without warning, the man lashed out. It was a simple jab. Not fast, not by pro standards, but to Izuku, it was a blur. He flinched, closing his eyes and throwing his hands up. The fist stopped an inch from his nose. The wind from the punch ruffled his bangs. Reaction time, garbage, the man grunted. Instinct, cowardly. Muscle mass, non-existent. He poked Izuku in the chest. You're soft, kid. Heroes are made of steel. You're made of marshmallow. Then harden me. Izuku shouted. The man paused. He looked at the desperation in the boy's eyes. It was a familiar look. The look of someone who had nothing left to lose. My name is Goro, the man said, walking back to his chair. I charge 5,000 yen a month. No refunds. If you vomit on my mats, you clean it up. If you break a bone, you walk to the hospital yourself. Deal, Izuku said instantly. And kid? Goro sat down and picked up his paper. I don't teach styles. I don't do belts. I teach you how to hurt people so they don't get up. You cool with that? Izuku thought about the sludge villain. He thought about the fear in Bakugo's eyes. Yes. Month 2, breaking point. Goro wasn't a teacher. He was a tormentor. The first month consisted of 0 fighting. It was purely physical conditioning designed to make Izuku quit. Run until you taste pennies, Goro would yell, hitting the heavy bag with a rhythmic thud thud thud. Izuku ran. He ran the docks, jumping over rusted chains and dodging forklifts. He carried sandbags up the stairs of the municipal park until his legs shook so violently he collapsed. He vomited. A lot. He cleaned it up, just as promised. Diet was the next battle. Izuku began tracking his macros with the same obsessive detail he used to track hero stats. No more katsudon. It was boiled chicken, broccoli, rice, and protein powder that tasted like chalk. Inko noticed, of course. Izuku, honey, you're looking thin, she said one evening at dinner, eyeing his plate of steamed vegetables. I'm cutting body fat, Mom, Izuku said, staring at a textbook on kinesiology and biomechanics. I need to increase my power-to-weight ratio. Are you still planning on UA? Inko asked, her voice small. She hadn't forbidden it. She couldn't bring herself to crush him again after the doctor's visit years ago, but her disapproval was a silent fog in the apartment. Yes, but Izuku, without a quirk. Mom. Izuku put down his chopsticks. He looked at her. His face was gaunt, dark circles under his eyes, but his jawline was beginning to sharpen. I know you're scared. But I can't stop. If I stop, I'm nothing. Inko didn't reply. She just cried silently into her tea. Izuku didn't comfort her. He couldn't. He needed that hardness. If he softened for her, he would break for the world. Month 4, The Art of the Null. Stop trying to punch like All Might. Goro's bamboo shurnai cracked against Izuku's ribs. Izuku hissed, stumbling back, clutching his side. You're 166 centimeters and 55 kilograms, Goro barked, circling him. If you try to trade blows with a guy who can turn his skin to rock or a guy who weighs 300 pounds, you lose. Every time. Physics doesn't care about your feelings. Then what do I do? Izuku gasped, sweat stinging his eyes. You cheat, Goro said. You use the ground. You use their clothes. You use their momentum. They started judo. For weeks, Izuku spent his evenings being thrown into the mat. The world was a blur of ceiling-floor-ceiling pain. He learned yukimi, the art of falling, before he learned anything else. Tuck the chin. Disperse the impact. Don't fight gravity. Then came the grappling. A finger is just a small lever, Goro explained, grabbing Izuku's index finger and twisting. Izuku yelped, dropping to his knees. A wrist is a hinge. An elbow is a fulcrum. You don't need super strength to break a fulcrum. You just need angle and pressure. It clicked. Izuku's mind, wired for analysis, devoured the information. This wasn't magic. It was geometry. It was biology. He began filling a new notebook, Volume 1, Human Weaknesses. The carotid artery, 5 kilograms of pressure to induce unconsciousness. The solar plexus, cluster of nerves, unprotected by bone. The floating ribs, susceptible to fracture from upward strikes. He stopped watching hero fights for the spectacle. He watched them to see where the heroes messed up. Empty Lady relies on size, but her center of gravity is high. A sweep to the ankle would topple her. Kamui Woods exposes his core when he extends his limbs. Vulnerable to close quarters slashing. One rainy Tuesday, Goro tossed a wooden knife at him. Defend. Izuku fumbled, catching it. Wait, a knife? Goro pulled out a rubber knife dipped in red chalk. If I touch you, you bleed. If you bleed, you die. Go. It was a massacre. By the end of the session, Izuku's white t-shirt was covered in red chalk marks. His throat, his arteries, his stomach. You died 18 times in 5 minutes, Goro said, lighting a cigarette. In the street, villains don't monologue. They shank you? You need to be faster. You need to be meaner. Meaner? You hesitate, Goro said, pointing at him with the cigarette. You see an opening, and you think about hurting them. You think about the rules. A quirkless hero? That's a myth. You're a vigilante with a license if you survive. You fight dirty, Midoriya. Kick the groin. Gouge the eyes. Bite if you have to. Survival is the only win condition. That night, Izuku looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. A bruise was blooming purple on his cheekbone. Meaner, he whispered. He bared his teeth. It didn't look like a hero's smile. It looked like a snarl. Month 6, the gadgeteer. Halfway through the 10 months, Izuku hit a wall. He was stronger. He could run a 5K in under 20 minutes. He could throw Goro, occasionally, if he caught the old man off guard. But it wasn't enough. He was sparring with a simulation in his head. Bakugo. Right hook. Dodge. Grab arm. Throw. Simulation result. Bakugo uses his other hand to explode my face while I'm grappling. Result death. He couldn't close the gap. Range was the enemy. Without a quirk to project force, he was forced into the kill zone to do any damage. He needed a multiplier. He went to the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was a garbage dump, a graveyard of human excess. But to Izuku's new eyes, it was a hardware store. He spent weekends scavenging. He wasn't cleaning the beach to make it pretty. He was mining it. He found steel pipes, copper wiring, batteries, broken electronics. He dragged a rusted bicycle frame home and spent 3 nights cutting it down with a hacksaw he bought at a dollar store. He shaped the steel tube into a baton, about 24 inches long. He wrapped the handle in tennis grip tape. It was crude. It was heavy. But when he swung it against a discarded tire, it dented the rubber deep. Force equals mass x acceleration. Concentrate the force on a small surface area. He began researching support items. The laws were strict. Civilians couldn't carry weapons. But there were loopholes for mobility aids and tools. He modified the baton to be collapsible. It was tricky, requiring springs and a locking mechanism he salvaged from a broken umbrella and a car jack. It took him 4 weeks of trial and error, cut fingers, and frustration. When it finally worked, snapping open with a satisfying shhh clack, he felt a surge of triumph that rivaled any test score. He didn't stop there. He bought potassium nitrate and sugar from the grocery store. Smoke bombs. Primitive, but effective for breaking line of sight. He bought high-lumen flashlights and wired them to strobe at a frequency that induced disorientation. He was building a utility belt from scraps. Month 7, the ghost of Aldera. School became a strange purgatory. Izuku stopped muttering. He stopped flinching. He sat in class taking notes, but his focus was elsewhere. He was calculating the tensile strength of the teacher's tie. He was mapping the exits. The bullying changed. It used to be that Bakugo would explode his desk, and Izuku would cry. The lackeys would laugh. It was a ritual. Now, it was different. Oh, Deku! Bakugo kicked Izuku's chair. Izuku didn't jump. He didn't look up from his notebook, which was now titled Urban Warfare Tactics in a Discrete Code. He just shifted his weight, bracing his feet against the floor. I'm talking to you, damn nerd! Bakugo slammed his hand onto the desk, popping an explosion. Izuku slowly closed his notebook. He looked up. His eyes were bags of exhaustion, but the irises were sharp, piercing. He looked through Bakugo, not at him. I'm studying Katsuki, Izuku said softly. The use of the given name, not Kaken, made the class go silent. Even Bakugo blinked, taken aback. Ha! Bakugo's hand smoked. You think you're tough now? Because you've been running around the docks with some hobo? I've seen you, Deku. You look like a zombie. And you look like you're over-relying on your upper body strength, Izuku murmured, almost to himself. Your stance is wide. Vulnerable to a low sweep. What did you say? Bakugo lunged. He swung a right hook. A classic, telegraphed Bakugo swing. Izuku's body moved on autopilot. Goro's voice. Step inside the guard. Deflect. Izuku didn't block. He slipped his head to the left, letting the explosion graze his ear. He brought his forearm up, guiding Bakugo's wrist past him, and for a split second, he had Bakugo's back. He could have driven his knee into the back of Bakugo's knee. He could have slammed his face into the desk. He stopped. He stood behind Bakugo, hands at his sides, breathing steadily. Bakugo stumbled, his momentum carrying him forward. He whirled around, eyes wide, confusion warring with rage. You little. Sit down, Bakugo, the teacher droned from the front, not looking up. Stop disturbing the class. Bakugo vibrated with fury. He looked at Izuku, really looked at him, and saw something he didn't recognize. The prey wasn't running. The prey was bored. "This isn't over," Bakugo hissed, sitting down. Izuku opened his notebook. Bakugo's reaction speed has increased, but his temper remains a tactical exploit. Use taunts to disrupt rhythm. He didn't feel triumph. He felt cold. He was turning his childhood friend into Data. Month 8, the first blood. It happened on a Tuesday night, coming back from the dojo. Izuku was taking a shortcut through a commercial district, a narrow alley lined with vending machines. He was tired, his muscles aching from a session of Krav Maga drills focused on disarming gunmen. "Hey, kid." "Nice bag." Izuku stopped. Two men stepped out from the shadows behind a dumpster. One was tall, with spikes protruding from his shoulders. The other was shorter, holding a butterfly knife, his fingers elongated like tentacles. "Muggers. Low-level thugs. Give us the bag and the shoes," the knife man said, flicking the blade. "Red sneakers. Those fetch a price." Izuku's heart hammered. This wasn't a spar. This wasn't Goro pulling his punches. This was real. Adrenaline spike. Heart rate 140. Tunnel vision setting in. "Breathe." "I don't have any money," Izuku said, his voice surprisingly steady. He shifted his stance, dropping his center of gravity. He casually moved his hand to his belt, where the collapsible staff was clipped under his jacket. "Did I ask?" The spike man grinned. "I just want to hurt someone," he charged. He was slow. Sloppy. Drunk on his own minor power. Spikes on shoulders. Charging headfirst. Momentum is my friend. Izuku didn't retreat. He stepped in. As the spike man swung a haymaker, Izuku dropped to his knees. He slid across the asphalt, painful, gritty, and kicked the man's leading ankle with everything he had. Crack. "Aya!" The man toppled, his ankle rolling sickeningly. He slammed face first into the concrete. The knife man froze. You broke his leg. "You threatened me," Izuku said, standing up. He drew the baton. Flick. The metal staff extended with a snap. The knife man growled and lunged, thrusting the blade. Izuku parried. Metal clanged against metal. The vibration jarred his arm, but he held firm. Disarm drill 4. Strike the radial nerve. Izuku swung the baton, hard. He hit the man's wrist. There was a sickening crunch of bone. The knife clattered to the ground. The man screamed, clutching his wrist. "Eyes!" Goro's voice in his head. Izuku didn't hesitate. He thrust the tip of the baton into the man's solar plexus. The man folded like a lawn chair, wheezing, all the air driven from his lungs. It was over in 10 seconds. Izuku stood there, chest heaving. The two men were on the ground, groaning. One clutching a broken ankle, the other a broken wrist. Izuku looked at his hands. He was shaking. He looked at the men. They were in pain. Because of him. He felt nauseous. He pulled out his phone. He dialed 110. "Police? There's been an attempted robbery in the alley off 3rd. 2 perpetrators. They tripped. They need an ambulance." He hung up and ran. He didn't stop running until he reached the beach. He fell onto the sand, gasping. He looked at his baton. There was a smudge of blood on the tip. He wiped it off furiously in the sand. "It works," he whispered, tears pricking his eyes. "It works." He wasn't happy. He was terrified. He realized then that violence wasn't cool. It wasn't like the cartoons. It was ugly, and it sounded like snapping twigs, and it smelled like fear. But he had won. Without a quirk. He lay on his back and looked at the stars. "I can do this." Month 9, the theoretical. The physical training tapered off. Goro said there was nothing more he could teach in a month that would change the outcome. Now, it was about the mind. Izuku spent the last month studying UA. He analyzed the entrance exam. Robots. The practical exam has historically used robots. Why? To avoid legal issues with students fighting humans. Robots are predictable. They have sensors. They have wires. He couldn't punch a robot to death. He would break his hands. So, he studied robotics. He went to the library and read college-level textbooks on hydraulics, circuitry, and sensor arrays. Most combat droids have a visual sensor cluster in the head. Blind that, and they revert to proximity sensors. Proximity sensors can be jammed with chaff. He built chaff grenades, balloons filled with aluminum foil strips and glitter. Hydraulics rely on pressure lines. A severed line bleeds fluid, depressurizing the system. The joint seize up. He sharpened the end of his staff. It wasn't just a club anymore. It was a pry bar. A spear. He was going to disassemble the exam. Month 10, the morning of. The alarm went off at 6 a.m. Izuku didn't need it. He was already awake, doing push-ups. 198. 199. 200. He stood up. Sweat glistened on his skin. He walked to the mirror. The boy in the reflection was not the boy from 10 months ago. His face had lost its roundness. His jaw was set. His neck was thicker. His shoulders were broader, corded with lean, functional muscle. His hands were calloused, the knuckles rough and scarred from hitting the makiwara board. His eyes were the biggest change. The green was the same, but the shine was gone. They were still. Watchful. He showered, the water running cold to wake up his nervous system. He put on his school uniform. It was tight around the shoulders now. He walked into the kitchen. Inko was there, making breakfast. She looked at him, and her hands trembled as she set down the plate of fish and rice. Izuku, she said softly. Thanks, Mom. He ate quickly, efficiently. Here. She handed him a small box. He opened it. It was a mouthguard. A high-quality, custom-molded one. I know I can't stop you, she said, tears spilling over. I know you're going to go, no matter what I say. But please, just keep your teeth. Izuku looked at the mouthguard. It was an admission of defeat, but also a token of support. It was the most she could give. I will, he said. He hugged her. He felt strong against her softness. I'll be careful. You're not going to be careful, she sobbed. You're going to be reckless. Just come home. I promise. He grabbed his yellow backpack. Inside, nestled between pencils and forms, was his gear. The baton. The smoke bombs. The flashlights. The mouthguard. He walked out the door. The gates of UA. The high school loomed like a fortress of glass and steel. The H shape pierced the sky. Crowds of students were streaming in. He saw people with mutations, people floating, people glowing. The genetic elite. Izuku walked among them, a ghost in the machine. Out of my way, Deku. Bakugo walked past him, bumping his shoulder. Hard. Izuku didn't budge. He absorbed the impact, rotating his shoulder slightly to disperse the force. Bakugo stumbled a half-step, surprised by the solidity of the object he had hit. Bakugo turned, a snarl on his face. Don't stand in front of me. Or I'll kill you. Good luck, Katsuki, Izuku said. He didn't say it with sarcasm. He said it with indifference. He walked past Bakugo, toward the massive doors. He remembered the rooftop. He remembered the sludge. He remembered the nights vomiting in the alley behind Goro's dojo. He remembered the crunch of the mugger's wrist. He clenched his right hand. He felt the phantom weight of the baton. All Might said I couldn't be a hero. Society said I am a victim. Goro said I am a survivor. Izuku looked up at the UA crest. I am the null set. The empty variable. He stepped through the gates. And I'm about to crash the system. The pencil snapped. The sound was sharp and sudden in the quiet hum of the lecture hall, but no one turned around. The written exam for UA High was a battlefield of silent desperation. Hundreds of students were bent over their papers, sweating, tapping feet, and muttering silently as they poured years of preparation onto Scantron sheets. Izuku Midoriya stared at the broken graphite tip on his desk. He wasn't nervous. That was the strange part. He had expected to be shaking. He had expected the old Deku, the one who flinched at loud noises and stuttered when spoken to resurface the moment he walked through the glass arches of UA. But looking at the question on the paper, question 34, analyze the impact of the Vigilante Repeal Act of 2135 on collateral damage insurance rates. He felt nothing but a cold, clinical familiarity. He knew this. He knew all of this. He picked up a spare pencil. He didn't rush. He filled in the bubble. C. Insurance premiums rose by 14% due to unregulated quirk usage. He moved to the next section, tactical scenarios. Question 42. A villain with a gigantification quirk is rampaging in a district with narrow streets, less than 4 m width. Civilians are present. How do you engage? Option A. Frontal assault to draw aggro. Option B. Evacuate civilians first. Option C. Lure the villain to a wider area. Izuku paused. The hero answer was B or C. That's what All Might would do. But Izuku's mind, sharpened by Goro's cynicism and 10 months of gritty realism, saw the flaw. Evacuation takes time you don't have. Luring requires the villain to follow. If the villain is mindless or simply destructive, either works. He filled in C, because this was a standardized test and he needed the points, but in the margin, he scribbled a faint note in pencil. Target the Achilles tendon or inner ear to force a drop in elevation, restricting movement range before evacuation. He erased it a second later. Yui didn't want soldiers. They wanted idols. He finished the exam with 20 minutes to spare. While other students agonized over the complex algebra or the quirk history, Izuku sat still, his hands folded on the desk. He closed his eyes and visualized the schematics of a hydraulic piston. Valve opens. Fluid compresses. Piston extends. Weak point, the seal between the chamber and the rod. Time's up. Present Mick's voice boomed over the speakers. Izuku opened his eyes. The easy part was over. Now came the culling. The orientation hall. The auditorium was vast, a cavernous space filled with the murmurs of hopefuls. Izuku sat near the back, his yellow backpack clutched between his knees. To his right, Katsuki Bakugo sat with his arms crossed, radiating a palpable aura of hostility. He hadn't spoken to Izuku since the morning. It was a tense truce, held together by the unspoken understanding that today, words didn't matter. Welcome to the live performance. Present Mike screamed from the stage, his voice amplified by his quirk to ear-shattering levels. Everybody say hey. Silence. Tough crowd. Mike didn't miss a beat. All right, examinees. We're going to conduct a 10-minute mock urban battle. The screen behind him lit up, displaying the layout of the battle centers. You can bring whatever you want. Mike shouted. After this presentation, you'll head to your assigned battle center. Okay? Izuku glanced at his exam ticket. Battle Center B. He glanced at Bakugo's. Battle Center A. TCH, Bakugo scoffed, catching his eye. Looks like they split us up so we don't kill each other. Lucky you, Deku. You won't have to watch me crush your score. I'm not worried about your score, Katsuki, Izuku said quietly, staring at the stage. Bakugo bristled at the tone, calm, dismissive, but before he could snap back, Present Mike continued explaining the robots. The 1-pointer. Fast, fragile. The 2-pointer. Tanky, slow. The 3-pointer. Agile, heavily armed with machine guns, rubber bullets. Your goal is to rack up points by immobilizing these faux villains. Excuse me. May I ask a question? A hand shot up in the middle of the sea of students. A tall boy with glasses and stiff posture stood up. The spotlight hit him. There appear to be 4 types of villains on this handout. The boy shouted, chopping his hand through the air. Such a glaring error would be shameful for a top-tier institution like UA. We are here to be molded into exemplary heroes. He turned around, pointing a stiff finger directly at Izuku. And you! The one with the curly hair. Izuku blinked. The auditorium turned to look at him. The spotlight didn't move, but the weight of 1,000 eyes felt like a physical pressure. You've been muttering this whole time, the boy accused. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, you should leave immediately. A ripple of laughter went through the hall. Izuku felt the heat rise in his cheeks, but he didn't shrink away. Not this time. He looked at the boy. I wasn't muttering about the tour, Izuku said, his voice projecting surprisingly well. I was calculating the probable engagement distance of the 3-pointers based on the chassis design shown on screen. If you're done interrupting the briefing, maybe we can hear about the 4th robot. The laughter died instantly. The boy with glasses blinked, stunned by the retort. He sat down slowly. I see. Okay. Present Mike broke the tension. Nice catch, examinee 7111. The 4th villain is a 0-pointer. Think of it as a hurdle. It's huge, but worth nothing. My advice? Run away, Izuku thought. A hazard. An obstacle meant to test panic response. That's all from me. Mike shouted. Remember the motto. Plus ultra. Break a leg, everyone. Battle Center B, the gate. The bus ride was silent. Izuku stood near the doors, holding a strap. He was wearing his green tracksuit, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His forearms were wrapped in sports tape. He wore heavy-duty knee pads and the iron soles, reinforced combat boots he had modified with steel plating in the toes and heels. But the most conspicuous item was the black cylinder strapped to his right thigh. Hey, Izuku looked down. A girl with brown hair and a round face was looking at him. She looked nervous. That was cool back there, she said. Telling off that intense guy. He was right, Izuku said flatly. I was muttering, oh. She fidgeted with her fingers. I'm Uraraka Ochako. You're Midoriya, right? Yeah, are you? She looked at the cylinder on his leg. Are you allowed to have that? They said we couldn't bring support items unless we registered them. I registered it, Izuku said. He touched the handle of the collapsible staff. Clause 14, Section B of the exam rulebook. Applicants with physical disadvantages or quirkless status may petition for the use of non-projectile tools to level the playing field. Uraraka's eyes went wide. Quirkless? Wait, really? The bus came to a halt. The doors hissed open. Really, Izuku said. He stepped off the bus. The battle center was a city. A fake city, but a city nonetheless. Skyscrapers, streets, traffic lights. It was impressive. A crowd of students gathered at the massive gate. They were stretching, revving up their quirks. Some had engines in their legs. Others had lasers. One guy had a tail. Izuku stood apart from them, near the wall. He reached down and unclipped the cylinder. He flicked his wrist. Clack. The staff extended to 5 feet of matte black steel. It was weighted at the ends. A bludgeon and a lever. The boy with glasses, Ida, walked up to him. He looked at the staff, then at Izuku. I apologize for my outburst earlier, Ida said stiffly. But I must ask. Do you truly intend to fight robots with a metal stick? This exam is designed to test our quirks. It's designed to test our potential, Izuku corrected. He checked the locking mechanism on the staff. And steel breaks if you hit it right. Start. President Mick's voice screamed from a tower high above the gate. The students froze. They were waiting for a countdown. A whistle. A signal. Izuku didn't wait. The moment the word start hit the air, Izuku exploded into motion. He didn't have a quirk to propel him, but he had explosiveness training. He sprinted, his boots pounding the pavement, leaving the confused pack behind. What are you waiting for? Mike yelled. There are no countdowns in real battles. Follow that kid. The realization hit the crowd. They roared and charged. But Izuku was already inside the urban jungle. The first robot appeared around a corner. A one-pointer. It was a monocycle design with spindly arms and a red glowing eye. Target acquired, it droned. It lunged, its speed surprising. Izuku didn't stop running. He didn't try to punch it. He ran directly at it. As the robot swiped with a metal claw, Izuku slid. He dropped to his knees, his momentum carrying him under the robot's guard. The concrete scraped his knee pads. He thrust the staff upward. He wasn't aiming for the armor. He aimed for the exposed joint where the wheel met the chassis. The steel tip of the staff jammed into the axle. Izuku rolled away as the robot's own momentum betrayed it. The wheel locked up. The chassis spun violently, torque snapping the axle. The robot crashed into the wall, sparks showering down. 1 point. Izuku scrambled up and kept running. Efficiency, he told himself. I can't trade blows. I have to be a surgeon. He turned onto a main street. It was chaos. Other students were blasting robots apart. A boy with a laser navel destroyed 3 in a row. Izuku felt a pang of envy. They make it look so easy, but envy was inefficient. A 2-pointer, a scorpion-like tank, rumbled out of an alley, cornering a student who was reloading tape from his elbows. The robot raised its tail to strike. Izuku vaulted over a parked car. He reached into his belt pouch and pulled out a small, gray sphere. A paint bomb, latex paint inside a fragile wax shell. He threw it. Splat. The paint hit the 2-pointer's primary sensor array on its face. Visual sensors obstructed, the robot announced, its tail wavering. Recalibrating. The robot paused, confused. Izuku was already there. He jumped onto the robot's back. He jammed the end of his staff under the plating protecting the neck cables. Leverage. He heaved back with a grunt. The plating groaned, then popped off. Exposed wires sparked. Izuku reversed his grip and stabbed the staff into the circuitry, ripping it out. The robot powered down with a dying whine. 3 points. Whoa, the tape elbow guy said, staring at him. You just took it apart. Move, Izuku snapped, jumping down. There's more coming. He ran. 10 minutes. That was the limit. Izuku was a ghost in the chaos. He didn't engage groups. He hunted stragglers. A 3-pointer aimed its machine gun arm at him. Izuku threw a handful of ball bearings on the ground as he ran. The robot stepped on them, its metal feet slipping on the asphalt. As it stumbled, Izuku used the wall to parkour kick its head, knocking the sensor dish loose. 6 points. He was sweating profusely. His lungs burned. This was harder than the dojo. The robots didn't feel pain. They didn't get tired. 10 points. 15 points. He heard explosions in the distance. Bakugo was probably racking up 50 by now. Don't compare. Just survive. He rounded a corner and saw a 3-pointer engaging a girl with earphone jacks. She was struggling. Izuku checked his pouch. 1 paint bomb left. 2 flashbangs, strobes. He threw the flashbang. Bang flash. The robot's optical sensors overloaded, blinded by the sudden lux spike. It flailed. Izuku sprinted past it, swinging his staff like a baseball bat into the rear exhaust port. He cracked the heat sink. The robot overheated and shut down. 18 points. He checked his watch. 2 minutes left. 18 points isn't enough. The cutoff is usually around 30. I need more. He was exhausted. His arms felt like lead. The vibrations from hitting metal were taking a toll on his wrists. His hands were bleeding inside his gloves. Warning, the PA system buzzed. 2 minutes remaining, and then, the ground shook. It wasn't a vibration. It was an earthquake. Buildings groaned. Glass shattered. From the center of the city, a shadow rose. It blocked out the sun, the 0-pointer. It was immense. A colossal machine the size of a skyscraper, rolling forward on treads as wide as a highway. Its green paint was chipped and scarred. It punched a building. The entire structure collapsed like a house of cards. Debris rained down, concrete blocks the size of cars. The students froze. The bravado vanished. This was an apex predator. Run! Someone screamed. The crowd broke. They turned and fled, a stampede of panic. Even the ones with strong quirks were sprinting away. Izuku's instinct was to run too. It's worth 0 points. It's a waste of energy. Logic dictates retreat. He turned to follow the crowd. Oh wow! The cry was faint, buried under the rumble of the treads. Izuku stopped. He looked back. Through the dust cloud, he saw her. The round-faced girl. Uraraka. She was on the ground. A piece of concrete rubble had pinned her leg. She was struggling to lift it, but her quirk, zero gravity, required touch, and her hands were busy trying to push the rock. She was exhausted. The 0-pointer loomed over her. Its massive tread was descending. It wasn't aiming for her. She was just an ant in its path. She's going to die. The thought was absolute. The teachers wouldn't make it in time. The robot was too heavy to stop quickly. Izuku looked at the fleeing students. No one else saw her. Or if they did, they were too scared. Be realistic, All Might had said. Physics doesn't care about your feelings, Goro had said. Izuku turned around. He didn't think about points. He didn't think about UA. He didn't think about his lack of power. He thought about the notebook. Null set. Volume 3, Mechanized Warfare. Gigantic enemies have a center of gravity. They rely on gyroscopic stabilizers to remain upright while moving over uneven terrain. He clipped his staff to his belt. He tightened the straps on his boots. He ran toward the monster. Hey! Kid! Don't! Ida shouted from the retreating crowd, stopping when he saw the green blur rushing the wrong way. Izuku ignored him. He entered the dust cloud. The robot was directly above Uraraka now. The shadow fell over her face. She looked up, terror freezing her features. Then she saw him. Izuku didn't run to her. He ran past her. He ran to the robot. He targeted the massive tread. The metal plates had grooves for traction. A ladder. Izuku jumped. He caught the moving tread, his fingers screaming as the metal bit into his gloves. He hauled himself up. Don't look down. Don't look down. He climbed. The robot was moving, shaking. The wind whipped at his face. He scrambled up the side of the leg, using his parkour training to find purchase on bolts and seams. He reached the knee joint. It was a massive rotating gear the size of a house. Higher. He needed the core. He climbed the torso. The ground was dizzyingly far away now. Uraraka was a speck. He reached the shoulder. There, behind the massive head, where the neck joined the body, was a ventilation array. And beneath that, humming with the sound of a jet engine, was the primary gyro-stabilizer, a spinning turbine keeping the behemoth balanced. It was shielded by a grate. Izuku pulled out his staff. He extended it. He stood on the robot's shoulder, the wind threatening to blow him off. He looked like a flea challenging a god. Hey! Big guy! Izuku screamed, his voice cracking. The robot didn't hear him. It continued its forward march. Izuku jammed the tip of his staff into the gap of the ventilation grate. He used the staff as a lever. Force equals mass x acceleration. He put his entire body weight into it. He screamed. Veins bulged in his neck. Snap! The grate popped loose, flying off into the air. The turbine was exposed. Spinning at thousands of RPM, Izuku looked at his staff. It was steel. High carbon, tempered steel. This is gonna hurt, he whispered. He didn't punch. He didn't smash. He threw the staff into the turbine. Clang grind ch. The sound was the death scream of metal. The staff caught in the blades. The turbine seized. The kinetic energy of the spinning blades had nowhere to go. Boom! The stabilizer exploded from the inside. Smoke poured out. The zero-pointer lurched. Without its balance, and with its forward momentum unchecked, physics took the wheel. The massive robot tipped backward. It groaned, its legs buckling. It fell away from Uraraka, crashing onto its back with a force that registered on seismographs 3 miles away. The impact threw Izuku into the air. He was falling. 50 feet. 60 feet. I have no landing strategy, he flailed, trying to orient himself. The ground was rushing up to meet him. Tuck and roll. Aim for the debris pile. He saw a slanted slab of concrete. He angled his body. He hit. Pain exploded in his shoulder. He rolled, tumbling down the concrete slab, bouncing, scraping, bruising. He hit the pavement hard, skidding to a stop. Everything went black for a second. Then, the pain rushed in. Arg! Izuku coughed. His left arm was screaming. Dislocated. Maybe broken. His ribs felt like they had been kicked by a mule. He pushed himself up with his good arm. He spat blood onto the asphalt. The dust was settling. The zero-pointer lay on its back, smoke billowing from its neck, its wheels spinning uselessly in the air like a dying beetle. Silence descended on the city. Time's up. The siren blared. Izuku collapsed back onto the ground. He stared at the sky. It was blue. A nice, calm blue. He heard footsteps running toward him. Midoriya! It was Uraraka. She was limping, but she was moving. She fell to her knees beside him. Oh my God! You crazy, are you okay? Izuku chuckled. It hurt to laugh. Did I get any points for that? Uraraka stared at him, tears in her eyes. Points? You just took down a building with a stick. A crowd gathered. Ida was there. The laser guy. They looked at the fallen robot, then at the broken boy on the ground. He's quirkless? Someone whispered. No way. I saw him climb it, another said. He just broke the engine. That was terrifying. A small, elderly woman walked through the crowd. Recovery girl. Make way, she grumbled. She looked at Izuku. She sighed. Broken humerus. 3 cracked ribs. Concussion. and sheer exhaustion. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "You reckless child," she murmured. "But brave." The warmth of her quirk washed over him. The pain receded to a dull ache, replaced by a wave of drowsiness. Izuku's eyes fluttered shut. 18 points, he thought as he drifted off. "I failed. But she's alive." Null set complete. 1 week later, the letter arrived. Izuku sat at his desk. His arm was in a sling. He stared at the white envelope with the UA seal. He hadn't told his mother about the exam details. Just that he got hurt. She had cried, of course. He knew the math. He had counted. 18 villain points. It wasn't enough. The average acceptance score was usually around 40. He picked up the envelope. It felt heavy. "Might as well get it over with," he whispered. He tore it open. A metal disc fell out. It projected a hologram onto the wall. "I am here." All Might appeared on the screen. He was wearing a yellow suit. He looked massive, heroic, and apologetic. "Young Midoriya." Izuku flinched. He hadn't expected All Might. "It has been a while since the rooftop. I am here as a projection because I am now a teacher at UA. Surprise! Izuku stared. He's a teacher? You did well on the written exam. Perfect score. Impressive. But the practical. You scored 18 villain points. Under normal circumstances, this would be a failure. Izuku looked down. I knew it. However, All Might leaned into the camera. A hero course that rejects those who save others is no hero course at all. The screen changed. A video played. It was Uraraka. She was standing in front of President Mike in a negotiation room. He saved me. She was pleading. Please. Can you give him some of my points? I heard him say he only had 18. He sacrificed his score to help me. He doesn't even have a quirk, and he jumped on that giant robot. Izuku's breath hitched. You acted when others froze. All Might's voice returned. You used your limited tools to overcome an impossible odds. And most importantly, you risked your life for another. The scoreboard appeared. Izuku Midoriya, villain points 18, rescue points 60, total 78. Welcome, Izuku Midoriya. All Might extended a hand toward the screen. You have proven me wrong. This is your Hero Academia. The hologram faded. Izuku sat in the silence of his room. He looked at his hand. The hand that had held the staff. The hand that had trembled. He didn't cry. He didn't sob like he used to. A small, sharp smile cut across his face. Okay, he whispered. I'm in. He reached for his notebook. Chapter 1 complete. Next target, Aizawa Shota. The acceptance letter had been a validation. The first day of school was the trial. Yui High stood as a fortress of glass and optimism, a monument to the superhuman society. To the hundreds of students flooding through its gates, it was a dream factory. To Izuku Midoriya, walking with a steady, calculated gait, it was enemy territory. He wore the gray blazer with the red tie. It fit better now than it would have 10 months ago. His shoulders filled the fabric. But what stood out more than the uniform was the silence around him. Whispers trailed him like a wake behind a ship. That's him, right? The guy who took down the zero-pointer with a pipe? I heard he's quirkless. No way. That's an urban legend. You can't get into the hero course without a quirk. Izuku ignored them. He adjusted the strap of his yellow backpack, reinforced with Kevlar lining now, and kept his eyes forward. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to prove a hypothesis. He found the door. 1A. It was massive, designed for giants. Intimidation tactic, he noted mentally. Designed to make you feel small before you even enter. He slid the door open. Remove your feet from the desk immediately. Ha! Who are you to tell me what to do, Four Eyes? The voices were familiar. Tenya Ida was chopping the air in front of Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo was reclining, feet on the desk, looking like a king annoyed by a jester. Izuku sighed. Some variables remained constant. He stepped inside. The room went quiet. Bakugo froze. His red eyes locked onto Izuku. There was no explosion this time. Just a deep, simmering glare. Since the sludge incident, since the exam, Bakugo had been strangely quiet. He looked at Izuku not as a bug, but as a glitch in the matrix. something that shouldn't exist and needed to be corrected. Midoriya, Ida marched over, moving like a robot. I am Tenya Ida from Semi-Private Academy. I must apologize for my behavior at the entrance exam. You perceived the true nature of the test while I was blinded by the surface rules. I misjudged you. It's fine, Ida, Izuku said, walking past him to a desk in the back. I didn't perceive anything special. I just saw someone who needed help. Oh. It's the plain-looking boy. Ochako Uraraka appeared, beaming. You passed. I was so worried. Your arm, is it okay? Recovery girl fixed the bone, Izuku said, setting his bag down. It's still a bit stiff, but functional. That was amazing what you did. That punch, or I guess that throw. She mimed the throwing motion. I can't believe you're actually. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. Everyone froze. Lying in a yellow sleeping bag outside the door, looking like a caterpillar that had given up on life, was a man. He had long, messy black hair, bloodshot eyes, and a scarf made of gray cloth wrapped around his neck. He stood up, unzipping the bag with a sluggish motion. He pulled out a pouch of jelly drink and sucked on it. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, he muttered, checking a stopwatch. Time is a finite resource. You kids are not rational enough. He walked to the podium. His presence sucked the air out of the room. He wasn't loud like Present Mike or charismatic like All Might. He was a void. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. The class gasped. Homeroom teacher? This guy. Put these on, Aizawa said, pulling a gym uniform from his sleeping bag and tossing it onto the nearest desk. And meet me on the grounds. The PE grounds. The sun was high and brutal. The students of Class 1A stood in a cluster, wearing the blue and white Jui tracksuits. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka asked. But what about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? If you want to be a hero, you don't have time for leisurely events, Aizawa said, turning his back to them. Yui is known for its freestyle educational traditions. That applies to the teachers as well. He turned his head slightly, his dark eye fixing on Izuku. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance run. Grip strength. Upper body training. Toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school, right? No quirks allowed. He held up a device. The country still insists on using averages of students without quirks. It's not rational. The Ministry of Education is procrastinating. He pointed at Bakugo. Bakugo. How far could you throw a softball in middle school? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk, Aizawa said. Do whatever you want as long as you stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms. He smirked. Die. Boom. He added a blast to the throw. The ball shot into the sky like a mortar shell, leaving a trail of smoke. Aizawa held up the device. 705.2 meters. Whoa, that looks like fun. We can use our quirks as much as we want. The class was buzzing. This was what they were here for. To show off. To be special. Aizawa's expression darkened. The air grew heavy. Fun? He whispered. The chatter died instantly. You have 3 years to become a hero, Aizawa said softly. Will you have an attitude like that during a crisis? Fun? He smiled. It was a terrifying, jagged expression. Right. Let's make this interesting. The student who ranks last in total points will be judged to have no potential and will be instantly expelled. HAA? Expelled? Uraraka cried. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters, Aizawa listed. Highway pileups. Rampaging villains. Calamity is always unreasonable. Heroes are the ones who overturn those situations. If you wanted to hang out at a burger joint with your friends, you came to the wrong place. He brushed hair from his face. Welcome to U.A's hero course. The pressure was tangible. The students looked at each other, realizing the game had changed. Izuku stood silently. He watched Aizawa. He's serious, Izuku analyzed. Aizawa Shota. Hero name, Eraserhead. An underground hero. Known for efficiency and a high expulsion rate. Last year, he expelled an entire class of freshmen. Izuku looked at his classmates. They had engines, zero gravity, explosions, acid, super strength. He looked at his own hands. Flesh and bone. I am at a statistical disadvantage in every category involving raw output. He felt Aizawa's eyes on him again. It wasn't paranoia. The teacher was watching him specifically. It was a look of predetermined judgment. He thinks I don't belong here. Izuku tightened the straps of his gloves. Let's prove him wrong. Test 1, 50-meter dash. On your mark. Izuku crouched in the lane. Next to him was Tenya Ida. The boy's calves were literally car engines. I cannot beat an engine, Izuku thought. But I don't need to be first. I just need to not be last. Start. Bang. Ida was a blur. Whoosh. 3.04 seconds. The robot announced. Izuku sprinted. His form was perfect, head down, knees driving, arms pumping like pistons. He had spent months dragging tires up sand dunes. His explosive power was peak human for his age and weight. He crossed the line. 7.02 seconds. It was respectable. Better than the average high schooler, around 7.5. But compared to Ida? It was a snail's pace. He looked at the others. Tsuyu Ajiri, Frog 5.58. Uraraka, zero gravity on clothes 7.15. I beat Uraraka by a hair. Why? Her quirk reduces weight, but it reduces traction. Friction is necessary for sprinting. Izuku noted it down mentally. Don't use zero gravity for horizontal speed unless propulsion is added. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku squeezed the dynamometer until his knuckles turned white. He gritted his teeth, veins popping in his forearm. 56 kilograms, the machine beeped. It was strong. Very strong for a teenager of his build. Then he heard a crunch. Mizo Shoji, the guy with multiple arms, was holding a device that was now twisted metal. 540 kilograms, the machine read. Izuku sighed. Biological advantage. Unsurpassable. He looked over at Minoru Mineta, the small boy with great balls on his head. Mineta was struggling to get 30 kilograms. Target acquired, Izuku thought coldly. I have to consistently outperform the lower percentile. Test 3, standing long jump. Bakugo blasted himself across the sandbox. Aoyama used his naval laser to propel himself backward. Izuku stood at the line. Pure plyometrics. He swung his arms, coiled his legs, and launched. He cleared the sandbox. It was a great jump. But Katsuki had cleared the entire pit and landed on the grass. Izuku landed, rolled to disperse impact, and stood up. He dusted off his pants. Aizawa scribbled something on his clipboard. He didn't look impressed. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta was the king here, using his balls to bounce back and forth rapidly. Izuku relied on agility drills. Left, right. He was fast. His footwork was precise, honed by avoiding Goro's bamboo sword. He wasn't the fastest, but he wasn't the slowest. Test 5, the ball throw. This was it. The moment of truth. The other tests were about body mechanics. This one was about projection of power. Uraraka went up. She threw the ball. It floated. And floated. And floated. Infinity. Aizawa showed the device. The class cheered. Okay, Midoriya. You're up. Izuku walked to the circle. The softball felt chalky in his hand. The class went quiet. They had seen him take down the robot, but they hadn't seen how clearly. They expected a secret quirk. A hidden power. Izuku stood in the circle. I can't throw this 700 meters, he thought. The human shoulder has limits. The world record for a baseball throw is around 130 meters. He took a breath. He reached into his pocket. What is he doing? Kaminari whispered. Izuku pulled out a small, collapsed loop of fabric. He unfolded it. It was a sling. A simple, ancient weapon. A strip of Kevlar weave with a pouch in the middle. Is that allowed? Yaoyorozu asked. He registered non-projectile support tools, Ida whispered back. Technically, a sling is a lever extension. Izuku placed the ball in the pouch. He gripped the cords. He began to spin, slowly at first. Whoosh, then faster. Whoosh whoosh. He used his whole body. His hips, his torso, his shoulder. He became a centrifuge. The ball whined as it cut the air. Whoosh 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 whoosh. It's fast, Ciro said. Izuku's eyes were locked on the horizon. Release point. Now, he snapped his wrist. One cord released. The ball shot out of the sling like a bullet. It didn't have an explosion behind it, but it had physics. Angular momentum converted to linear velocity. It soared. It passed the 50-meter mark instantly. 80, 100. It began to arc down. It hit the ground and rolled. 142 meters, Aizawa announced. Silence. It was impressive for a human. It was double what Bakugo had thrown without a quirk. But compared to 700? Compared to infinity? 142 meters? Bakugo scoffed. That's it. You threw a rock, Deku. Big deal. It's not very heroic, someone muttered. Aizawa lowered the device. He stared at Izuku. Then, his scarf moved. Like a living thing, the gray cloth shot out. It wrapped around Izuku's waist and yanked him forward. Whoa! Izuku gasped as he was pulled face to face with the teacher. Aizawa's eyes were glowing red. His hair was floating. What is this? Aizawa hissed. A sling, Izuku choked out. Mechanics. Amplifying force. I saw the entrance exam, Aizawa interrupted. You broke a robot stabilizer. Rational. Dangerous, but rational. But here? You're using toys. Toys? This isn't the Stone Age, Aizawa said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. You have zero potential. You are relying on gadgets to mimic a fraction of the power your classmates generate naturally. What happens when your sling breaks? What happens when you lose your tools? He tightened the scarf. All Might have passed you on some misguided sentimentality about heart, but I am not All Might. I look at reality. And the reality is, a quirkless hero is a liability. You will get yourself killed, and more importantly, you will get others killed trying to save you. He released Izuku, shoving him back. Pack your bags. Go home. Don't waste my time. The class was stunned. Expelled? Just like that? But, he got 142 meters. Uraraka protested. That's better than half the class without quirks. Silence, Aizawa snapped. He looked at Izuku. Well? I erased your... Wait, you have nothing to erase. How tragic. Leave. Izuku stood there. He rubbed his waist where the scarf had dug in. He looked at Aizawa. He didn't look sad. He didn't look broken. He looked annoyed. Liability, Izuku repeated. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his notebook. He flipped it open. Aizawa Shota. Eraserhead. Quirk, erasure. Can nullify quirk factors by looking at the target. Weaknesses, dry eye. Blink interval. Line of sight obstructions. And, Izuku looked up. His green eyes bored into Aizawa's bloodshot ones. Reliance on the capture weapon to subdue targets after erasure. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. So you're a Fandal. That doesn't save you. You said I rely on tools, Izuku said, his voice gaining strength. You said if I lose my tools I'm useless. Take off your scarf, sensei. Aizawa paused. Excuse me? Take off the capture weapon, Izuku challenged. Without your quirk, which just brings people down to my level, and without your weapon, aren't you just a guy who knows martial arts? Like me? The class gasped. He's challenging the teacher? You erase quirks to level the playing field, Izuku stepped forward. I live on that playing field. Every day. I don't have a time limit. I don't get dry eye. I don't burn out. He pointed at the dynamometer. You call me a liability because I can't punch a building down. But in a hostage situation, Bakugo blows the building up. I disarm the gunman. In a stealth mission, Ida is a loud engine. I am silent. Izuku took a deep breath. You want rationality? Here's rationality. A villain prepares for quirks. They prepare for fire, for ice, for strength. They don't prepare for a piece of tungsten hitting their throat at 90 miles per hour. He dropped the sling on the ground. You can expel me if my score is the lowest. That's the rule you set. But don't expel me because of your prejudice against how I get the result. Results are all that matter. Isn't that UA's motto? Plus ultra? Silence stretched. It was thick and heavy. Bakugo looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Deku, talking back to a pro hero? Aizawa stared at the boy. The glowing in his eyes faded. His hair dropped. He looked at the sling on the ground. Then at the defiant, shaking, yet resolute boy. He's arrogant, Aizawa thought. Cheeky. Disrespectful. A small, creepy smile crept onto Aizawa's face. But he's not wrong. Pick up your trash, Aizawa said, turning around. Izuku blinked. Huh, the sling. Pick it up. Leaving litter on the field is irrational. Aizawa walked back to the tablet. We have 3 more tests. Sit-ups, toe touch, and distance run. If you waste time standing there giving speeches, you'll end up in last place anyway. Izuku scrambled to pick up the sling. Why yes sir! Aizawa glanced back over his shoulder. And Midoriya? Izuku froze. If you ever sass me like that again, I'll expel you for insubordination. Understand? Yes, sensei. Aizawa turned away to hide the smirk. This year might not be a total waste of time after all. The results. The sun was setting. The students were exhausted. Okay, here are the results, Aizawa said. He projected a hologram from his phone. The list appeared. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. 18. Minoru Mineta. 19. Toru Hagakure. 20. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku stared at the bottom of the list. Number 20. His heart sank. It felt like the rooftop all over again. Last place. Mineta was sobbing with relief. I'm not last. I'm not last. Izuku clenched his fists. I tried. I really tried. But the physical gap. By the way, Aizawa said, dismissing the hologram. The expulsion thing was a lie. Hiya? The class screamed in unison. It was a logical ruse to draw out your upper limits, Aizawa said deadpan. What? Uraraka slumped over. That scared me to death. I knew it all along, Yaoyorozu said, hand on her chest. It was obviously a pedagogical technique. No, you didn't, mumbled Siro. Izuku stood there, the adrenaline crashing. A lie? Aizawa walked past him. He stopped for a second. Midoriya. Izuku looked up. You were last, Aizawa stated. Your physical stats are, frankly, average. Even with the sling, your overall score was low because you lack versatility in movement compared to the others. Izuku nodded, swallowing hard. I know. However, Aizawa continued, keeping his voice low so only Izuku could hear. Mineta scored higher because of the sidesteps. Hagakure scored higher because of the dash. But in a real fight, a grape thrower and an invisible girl with 0 combat training die first. He looked Izuku in the eye. The test measures quirks. It doesn't measure combat capability. You have combat capability. That's the only reason you're still here. Don't make me regret keeping the bottom rank. Aizawa walked away. Go get changed. Curriculum sheets are in the classroom. Izuku watched him go. A wave of relief washed over him, so strong his knees almost buckled. I survived. Deku. Izuku turned. Bakugo was standing there. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't sparking. He looked confused. And that confusion was making him angry. How? Bakugo asked. You don't have a quirk. You're a pebble. How did you get in? Did you cheat? I didn't cheat, Katsuki, Izuku said, taking off his gloves. His hands were blistered. You're hiding something, Bakugo growled. You've been looking down on me this whole time, haven't you? Pretending to be weak? I am weak, Izuku said calmly. That's why I have to try harder than you. He walked past Bakugo. Don't ignore me! Bakugo shouted, but he didn't attack. The threat of Aizawa's expulsion, ruse or not, hung heavy in the air. The aftermath. That evening, Izuku sat at his desk. He opened Null Set. He turned to a new page. Teacher analysis.